The world is becoming increasingly complex and volatile. How can we make sense of it all?
I'm Richard Engel.
And I'm Yalda Hakim.
And we present Sky News' latest podcast, The World. Each week, we'll cut through the noise to guide you through the week's global events and explain to you why what happens out there matters to you wherever you are.
We're on the ground in some of the world's toughest places. Listen now to The World with Richard Engel and me, Yalda Hakim, wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello there, and welcome to Wednesday's Politics at Jack and Sam's Daily, the podcast that gives you everything you need to know about the day ahead in British politics in under 20 minutes.
It is Wednesday, December the 18th. My name is Jack Blanchard of Politico. With me, as you can hear, is Sam Coates of Sky News. And raise up the union, Jack, Sam, because get excited. Keir Starmer is in the country. He is here. The Prime Minister is here. He's in the UK, and he will be attending the last Prime Minister's Questions of the year. Feels like a real red letter day to me.
Before he heads off to go down people's chimneys in a week's time. For Christmas Day is a week today. You can very much get the sense that politics is winding down just at the moment. But we have his final weekly clash with Kemi Badenoch today, and then tomorrow there's his appearance before the liaison committee.
Just let me tell you something, Sam, from Playbook this morning, which my colleague Dan Bloom has written, who says that David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, is expected to head to Brussels today to join a meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky and the heads of government from Germany, France, Italy and Poland. Apparently Starmer has decided not to attend this and has sent Lammy instead. Has Keir Starmer actually decided that it might be wise for him to spend a day in the UK today, given it's the last PMQs of the year? Could it be that he's actually turned down a trip abroad? Stranger things have happened.
Or could it be that he made the possibly well-advised choice that in a competition between seeing world leaders and seeing the British media, which is what he's doing this evening at a drinks party, he is probably better advised to do the latter?
Oh, I can't think of anything worse than drinks with the lobbying number 10. Oh, I'd definitely go and see Zelensky. Anyway, last PMQs of the year today at lunchtime. And Kemi Badenoch, the Leader of Opposition, very helpfully released a video on what we used to call Twitter last night, where she appears to have given us a good steer on what she's going to, on her sort of new lines of attack. I don't know if you watched this, Sam, but she basically is trying to pitch the idea that Labour cave in on every possible deal that they try and negotiate. And she references the Chagos Islands deal. She references the pay deals that Labour has struck with various striking public sector workers, including doctors and including rail workers, of course. And the sort of inference that she's drawing is that when Keir Starmer heads off to Brussels in the new year, as we know he's going to do, to try and renegotiate the Brexit settlement, or at least tweak it or improve it or whatever, that Labour once again will sort of bow down and fail to get the deal that's good for the country, as she is framing it. And it wouldn't be surprising, Sam, given she put this video out last night of sort of a rather stern Kemi Badenoch talking into the camera and telling us what she thinks of Keir Starmer. Wouldn't be surprising to hear her try and frame some of her questions today around that sort of theme.
I have to say, I sometimes wonder whether Labour MPs want Keir Starmer to back down even more than Kemi Badenoch says that she does at the moment. Obviously, the big rumpuses with the Labour Party have included the 2-child benefit limit from before the election, the winter fuel payment abolition from just after the election. And then there was an announcement yesterday that has left quite a lot of Labour MPs aghast. And I wouldn't be surprised if this issue comes up at Prime Minister's Questions, which is about the so-called WASPy women who were born in the 1950s, whose retirement age was changed in the 2000s. But the allegation is that they weren't given proper notice that this was happening. The government wasn't legally obliged to do this, but Ombudsman has found that they should have done it. And the government has decided not to spend up to £10 billion in compensation. Now, on its own terms, I think the government thinks that they're on pretty strong ground because they weren't obliged to do this. But because Labour under Jeremy Corbyn backed WASPy women and compensation completely firmly in the 2019 election, and there were very, very strong hints in the last Parliament that compensation could be coming, loads of members of the now Cabinet standing and holding sort of signs saying we back WASPy women and compensation should be looked at. There is now a sort of political backlash inside the Labour Party about that. So Keir Starmer standing firm on some things, but not necessarily the things that his own side wish he would.
I'm struggling to see that so-called caving in on the Chagos Islands is really going to be one that really cuts through with the public. I do think it's one that's going to rear its head in the new year, though, once Donald Trump comes into the White House. We keep hearing from Nigel Farage, who is, of course, Donald Trump's mate. And indeed, Nigel Farage has written in the Telegraph this morning that there's going to be big trouble over the Chagos deal in the new year once Trump comes in, and he's going to try and unpick that. And so you could see that sort of blowing up for Keir Starmer in a diplomatic way, even if I doubt very much it's top of the list of people's complaints about the Labour government out there in the country. The railways one is an interesting one for her to seize upon, Sam, because Labour did, of course, settle with the rail unions pretty quickly. And indeed, the very next day after they announced that pay deal, to sort of much fanfare, look, we finally fixed this problem, one of the rail unions went and announced a whole new set of strikes. And there was very much anger at the then Transport Secretary, Louise Haigh, for allowing the sort of choreography of that to happen, because it just looks so bad that Labour are like, yeah, OK, here's your money, we've finally solved this deal. And then the unions just start walking out on strike again. And with, of course, great timing, we heard yesterday, Sam, that there will be another fresh round of rail strikes over the new year.
Of all the political stories that are around at the moment, I think what's going to happen on the railways and its link to politics is possibly one of the things that will be pretty high up on a lot of people's minds over the next few days. It's the strike action and the problems on the railways aren't on the front pages at the moment, but I wonder whether this is going to be a big theme of our politics in the next few days. And if I'm being honest, Jack, I don't know if you think this, but sometimes the state of the railway network is the thing that makes me wonder whether the UK is a serious country or not. It is so poor, and I speak as a part-time driver, but you just cannot rely on either the big intercity routes or sort of catching a casual connection without sort of reasonable risk of disruption. And the reason that matters in politics and the reason that it matters in this podcast is because one of Keir Starmer's biggest calls is to make effectively all of the problems on the railway his problem, because of course his flagship policy for the railways is to renationalise, bring back into public ownership everything to do with the railways. And you know, I'll get into it in a second, but you know, in America, when there's a holiday season, they put on more flights for Thanksgiving. In Britain, looking across the railway timetables, it's gruesome. Everywhere looks like there are cancellations, and that's before you get into the strike announced last night. It is something, I think, that is where politics actually makes people's blood boil quite a bit, and Keir Starmer has just taken a lot of ownership, a lot more ownership. So by this time next year, the rail timetables really, really will be the Prime Minister's problem.
Yeah, it's a bit of a punt, this policy, I have to say. I mean, if you look at the rail routes that have been taken into public ownership in the past, and of course the Tories kept having to take them into public ownership, even though they hated the idea because the franchise system that they set up was so appalling that the franchisees, the rail companies kept collapsing, and even the Tories were forced to take matters into their own hands and run certain lines for certain periods. And when they did so, the results have largely been pretty good. Consistency and reliability has improved. Money has gone back into the coffers of the Treasury. Like, there is some good sort of factual data as to why this might work, taking these lines back into public hands one by one over the next few years. However, as you say, it comes with enormous risk for Keir Starmer, because once these rail lines are back in public hands, and it will take a few years to sort of scoop them up one by one as each contract ends, as you say, it is then very much the government's problem. And instead of being angry at these sort of random, don't really understand what they are, massive corporate, private, foreign-owned rail operators, suddenly those of us standing on platforms waiting for never appearing trains are going to be angry at the Prime Minister, and that is definitely a downside risk for Keir Starmer. In terms of the rail networks over Christmas, well, what they say, Sam, is that fewer people travel over Christmas and in these periods, and therefore it's a good time to be restoring the railways. It doesn't sound like you really buy that argument.
I find it confusing that the point of the year where people want to get home to their families, people are travelling with children, a different profile of people use the railways. I think there's no doubt about that, that the rail service is obliterated. And as I say, you put on more services in America at holiday time, and you seem to put on less here. Just very specifically to look at the sort of news around this today, the Avanti strike is quite important just to analyse what's going on there. That is, there was a referendum, a vote, a ballot by Avanti train managers, and 83% of them rejected the offer, and on a sort of 83% turnout. And what's striking about this is the approach of government shortly after they came in did look like, and particularly when Sue Gray was there, that she wanted to enforce a sort of no strikes situation. She wanted to make sure that things like rail unions didn't take industrial action. She thought it was a bad look. And I think that was partly one of the reasons why some of the settlements that you got over in the summer were higher. But now there seems to be a different approach. Sue Gray has obviously gone. And you've got a change of Transport Secretary from the very union-friendly Lou Haig to Heidi Alexander, who we haven't talked about a lot since she became Transport Secretary. But she was known when she worked at Transport for London for taking a much more robust attitude towards the unions. And I think, talking to people, there is a bit of a sense in the unions that, having had a lot of goodwill and time for Lou Haig, they've sort of wiped the slate clean with Heidi Alexander and are prepared to play hardball, do more industrial action. And for her part, I wouldn't be surprised if Heidi Alexander tries to face down the unions a lot more, but potentially with consequences like this. What that means is that on Tuesday, the 31st of December, New Year's Eve, Thursday, the 2nd of January, and then every Sunday until May the 25th, 2025, there will now be industrial action. Put that on top of every other bit of disruption. You know, if you want to get in and out of London on East Midland Railways, well, they're closing St Pancras, and customers travelling to St Pancras have to transfer to rail replacement buses between Bedford and Milton Keynes. If you're coming to and from London from the west, Great Western Railways, well, they all stop. All services from the 27th to the 30th of December terminate and start from Reading. If you look at LNER, there are bus services replacing the trains kind of in parts of the north. Everywhere you look, there's basically a sort of almost, in some places, a weeks-long disruption over the holiday period. And I'm sure some work will be done, but it does feel concentrated for all of those families who are trying to get home. And I do wonder whether it's one of those things, whether fairly or not, politicians in a year's time are judged over.
Reminds me of the old joke, what's the three most dreaded words in the English language? Rail, replacement, bus. And of course, the Network Rail boss, former Network Rail boss Peter Hendy, is now a minister in the Labour government in the Lords, and so don't expect any fresh radical thinking about the way these sorts of maintenance works are carried out. Sam, these very much put him right in the middle of it, and this is the way it's always been done. Away from the trains, Sam, the other issue that may well come up at PMQs today, if he gets a question, is Nigel Farage, whose beaming face is peering out of many front pages at us this morning. If you're going through the newspapers, that soon to be, or already probably quite famous, notorious picture of him standing with Elon Musk at the Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida on Monday, along with Reform's new treasurer, Nick Candy. Feels like quite a big moment for Nigel Farage, that. He's written about it in the papers today. He didn't actually get to meet Donald Trump, which you would think he's probably a bit sore about, having gone all the way over there. But he definitely got the next best thing in terms of an hour with Elon Musk. Do you think there's any credence in this idea that Elon Musk really is going to start throwing money at British politics? And is it even allowed that a foreign businessman can pour £100 million into British politics, a far bigger donation than anyone else has ever done in the history of British politics? Should that just be okay for us to say, yeah, sure, why not just chuck the money into politics and change the game here, Elon?
There's a lot of hand-wringing around, largely in Labour circles, but if I'm being honest, it should be hand-wringing all over the political system about this. Back in 2000, the Labour Party introduced rules when Tony Blair was Prime Minister to ban foreign donations. But they did so by banning individuals who are based abroad and foreign nationals from giving money. However, there was a loophole, which is that UK companies can always give money, but it's often quite murky where that money comes from. And so there is an argument that if, for instance, the UK subsidiary of X was to give a lot of money and it just happened to be kind of from Elon Musk's sort of parent company, then that could be a route that Elon Musk could be used to fund to quite considerable sums not seen before in British politics, reform, because now there are a class of people with a lot of cash who look willing to, particularly in America, who look willing to fund that party. And the question is that allowed within the letter of the law, and is that allowed within the spirit of the law? Well, I'm sure there are plenty of Labour folk who would say, no, quite clearly, if Elon Musk wants to give money and he's just using a UK company, we've got to stop that. Indeed, there are, it looks like, some moves afoot. Lord Khan in the House of Lords, who's part of Angela Rayner's ministerial team, is hinting that there's some kind of look at donations at the moment. But the question isn't, are the laws fit for purpose? But really, is the Electoral Commission strong enough if it wants to step in and look at this decision should it happen? Because all the Electoral Commission would have to do is say, hang on a moment, we all know that Elon Musk is the ultimate donor for this gift to reform. That makes it illegal. But that would require the Electoral Commission to act more robustly and more firmly than they ever have done in their frankly quite weak 25-year lifespan. It's an organisation that has tiptoed towards big decisions and then kind of fallen backwards, initiated prosecutions that never happened, and is very happy to infract political parties over small and medium stuff. But if it looks like it's big stuff, they don't really have a track record of taking it on. So the question is the problem the laws about foreign donations? Is the problem enforcement about foreign donations? Or do people collectively think that Elon Musk or people like Elon Musk should be able to use their UK companies to give, given, frankly, that quite a lot of other people look like they're giving from abroad through this method, and it would be a wholesale change that you couldn't just apply to one person?
Right, and I'm sure Nigel Farage and his supporters will say, why shouldn't we take money if it is within the letter of the law? Who knows what the spirit of the law even means? It's certainly in his piece today, Farage says that following such intense media speculation, the issue of money was discussed with Elon Musk and there will be ongoing negotiations on that score. You just know he's loving the attention of this. If nothing else, Nigel Farage is, amongst many other things, a wind-up merchant, and he will be enjoying winding up the Labour Party and indeed the Tory Party with the suggestion that he could suddenly be head of the wealthiest party in the UK by miles and miles. I mean, we've never seen sums like this sort of thing being discussed. And of course, but to Elon Musk, Sam, it's just pocket change. I mean, it wouldn't make a blind bit of difference to him if he gave the money or not in terms of his own funds. And he might rather enjoy trying to blow up British politics. I don't know. I've never met the guy. I'm speculating now.
And the point that remains valid that we touched on a couple of weeks ago after that Spectator dinner is, in the past, it was said that money makes much less impact on British politics than it does on, say, American politics, because you can flood the TV airwaves in America with adverts paid for by donations, whereas in the UK you couldn't do that because of the rules around broadcasting. That has gone out of the window because of the internet, because pretty much most people spend more time looking at their phones than they do at the telly by a many factor of many times. And there are no rules, or next to no rules, about what can be put on social media sites and other places that people look. And frankly, we're in a world now where politicians use cash to generate their own content. So you and me as broadcasters and journalists compete not only with each other, but also against homegrown content by politicians. And that's what the cash pays for. And generating good videos and making sure they go everywhere and they flood the scene is what this cash can do. And we have just allowed a wholesale change in the way our political system operates by kind of now, people might think it's fine, people might think it's not fine, but structurally British politics has changed massively just in the space of 10 years by letting this happen without anybody really intervening. And the discussion about Elon Musk or other people who are billionaires wanting to fund our politics now is of a different order of consequence than it ever has been before.
The other thing Elon Musk pioneered in the recent US election, Sam, was he was obviously helping to fund Donald Trump's campaign, and his super PAC set up sort of paid grassroots organisers going out and doing mass door knockings in key states around the US. Now, of course, Reform UK doesn't have that much of a grassroots operation, at least yet. It's a relatively new party. It's still building out its basic operation across the country. It is not impossible, given a large amount of money, that it could try and set up something similar where it is literally paying people to go out door knocking and leafleting and flying in a way that, on a sort of scale that we haven't normally seen in the UK, where normally that sort of stuff is done by helpful volunteers and networks of volunteers who've been on the ground for years. So who knows how else Nigel Farage might spend his vast sums of money in 2025, were some to come his way.
Right, that is all we've got time for. That was the alarm. Inflation has risen to 2.6%, up from 2.3% in November. And I know that because Andrew Griffiths, the Shadow Business Secretary, has just WhatsApped me a lengthy statement denouncing the government. Unsurprising. I'm sure more bad news for Rachel Reeves will be something we touch on tomorrow. But until then, have a lovely day.
Merry Christmas. All right, see you in the morning, Sam. Cheers.
The world is becoming increasingly complex and volatile. How can we make sense of it all?
I'm Richard Engel,
And I'm Yalda Hakim.
and we present Sky News' latest podcast, The World. Each week, we'll cut through the noise to guide you through the week's global events and explain to you why what happens out there matters to you wherever you are.
We're on the ground in some of the world's toughest places. Listen now to The World with Richard Engel and me, Yalda Hakim, wherever you get your podcasts.